The rain pounded Nebulin's floating platforms with unrelenting fury. Zephyr Thorn pulled his waterproof coat tighter as he navigated the narrow walkways between the city's hovering districts. The atmospheric engineer preferred these moments, when most citizens retreated indoors, leaving him alone with the storm patterns he'd spent his life studying. A brilliant flash of lightning illuminated the metallic pathways, followed by thunder that shook the very air. Zephyr checked his handheld atmospheric monitor, noting the unusual electromagnetic readings. This wasn't a typical Nebulan downpour. Interesting, he muttered, adjusting the device's settings. The polarity shifts are completely unprecedented. A soft moan cut through the rainfall. Zephyr froze, scanning the dimly lit alleyway. There, collapsed against a collection unit, lay a figure he initially mistook for a shadow. "Hello?" he called, approaching cautiously. "Are you hurt?" As he drew closer, his breath caught. The woman before him was unlike anyone he'd ever encountered in Nebulan's diverse population. Her skin was a soft lavender shade that seemed to pulse with a subtle internal light. Delicate patterns, geometric lines, and swirls traced across her exposed arms, emitting a faint bluish glow. She was soaked through, shivering violently. Her eyes fluttered open momentarily, startling silver irises meeting his before closing again. "You need help," Zephyr said, kneeling beside her. "Can you understand me?" The woman's only response was another pained moan. Making a swift decision, Zephyr lifted her into his arms. Surprised by how light she felt, despite being thoroughly drenched, his apartment wasn't Farah. Modest living space packed with weather monitoring equipment and half-finished inventions. Zephyr cleared a path through his cluttered main room and gently laid the mysterious woman on his couch. Under the apartment's soft lighting, her features became clearer. Her face was delicately structured with high cheekbones and slightly pointed ears. The purple hue of her skin wasn't uniform, but varied in subtle gradients. The luminescent patterns he'd noticed earlier continued across her collarbone and disappeared beneath her strange, form-fitting garment that resembled woven seaweed and metallic threads. "What are you?" he whispered, fascination overcoming his usual reserve. Her eyelids fluttered again, revealing those striking silver eyes. "Help," she managed in a voice that carried an unusual resonance, like words spoken underwater. "Please." Zephyr hurried to gather towels and a thermal blanket. "You're safe," he assured her, carefully helping her out of the waterlogged outer layer of her clothing while respectfully preserving her dignity. He wrapped her in the thermal blanket, watching as the technology responded to her body temperature, adjusting to provide optimal warmth. "I'm Zephyr," he said, preparing a hot beverage. "You're in Nebulan. Can you tell me your name?" Her breathing had steadied somewhat, though shivers still ran through her body. "Lyra," she whispered. "My name is Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated, noticing how the patterns on her skin pulsed brighter when she spoke. "Rest now. The storm's not letting up anytime soon, but you're safe here." As if responding to his words, thunder crashed outside, rattling the windows. Lyra flinched, her hand instinctively reaching out and grasping his. Zephyr stared at their joined hands. His tan skin against her purple hand felt an inexplicable connection form between them. "Powerful and immediate as lightning." "Storm," she murmured. "It opened the way. I never meant to come this far up." Before Zephyr could ask what she meant, Lyra's eyes closed again, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. The rain continued its assault outside, but inside, Zephyr could only focus on the gentle rise and fall of the mysterious woman's chest, the fading glow of the patterns on her skin. Morning light filtered through Zephyr's rain-streaked windows, casting prismatic patterns across his apartment. He'd spent the night in an uncomfortable chair, unwilling to leave his mysterious guest alone. Now, as he prepared a simple breakfast, he heard a soft gasp from the living area. Lyra was sitting upright, the thermal blanket clutched to her chest. Her silver eyes darted around the apartment, taking in the weather instruments and half-assembled devices with obvious curiosity rather than fear. "Good morning," Zephyr said, keeping his voice gentle. "How are you feeling?" The luminescent patterns across her skin flickered like circuits processing information. "Better," she replied, her voice clearer than the night before, but still carrying that strange underwater resonance. "Thank you for helping me." Zephyr offered her a steaming mug. "It's tea. Might help warm you up." Lyra accepted it cautiously, studying the liquid before taking a tentative sip. Her eyes widened with surprise and pleasure. "This is ... extraordinary." "Just tea," he shrugged, settling across from her. "I have questions, if you're feeling up to it." Lyra nodded, her gaze direct and unwavering. "You deserve answers." "I am from Lumeria, a city beneath the ocean floor. We've existed alongside your surface world for millennia, though few of your kind know of us." "You're not human?" Despite the obvious differences in her appearance, the confirmation still stunned him. "Not as you would define it," she replied. "My ancestors adapted to depotion life so long ago that we evolved into something different. We breathe both water and air, though extended periods on the surface can be taxing." Zephyr's scientific mind raced with questions. "Those patterns on your skin? Bioluminescent markers," she explained, running her fingers along the glowing lines on her arm. "They serve multiple purposes: communication, navigation in darkness, energy absorption. Every Lumerian has unique patterns." "Why are you here?" "In Nebulan." Lyra's expression darkened. "Desperation. Lumeria is dying. The thermal vents that power our city are cooling. Without them, our entire civilization will collapse within months." She leaned forward, her patterns pulsing more intensely. "I was sent to find help. Our scientists believe that atmospheric engineers on the surface might have technology we could adapt." Zephyr blinked in surprise. "How did you know I'm an atmospheric engineer?" A small smile touched her lips. "Your dwelling speaks volumes about your work. And I studied surface occupations extensively before my journey." "The storm brought you here?" "We used its electromagnetic patterns as a transport conduit," she explained, "but the calculations were off. I was meant to arrive at a designated arrival facility, not—" She gestured vaguely. "Not in an alley." Zephyr ran a hand through his disheveled hair, processing the implications. "So there are others from Lumeria here?" "On the surface." Lyra shook her head, her expression growing vulnerable. "No, I'm alone. The journey requires considerable energy, and I was chosen because my physiology adapts better to surface conditions." Her voice quieted. "If I fail, there may not be enough resources for another attempt." Without thinking, Zephyr reached out, his hand covering hers. The contact sent a warm current through him, like a gentle electrical pulse. "Then we'll make sure you don't fail." Her silvery eyes met his, widening slightly at his words. "You would help my people?" "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied, surprising himself with his certainty. "Besides, I've spent my life studying atmospheric energy conversion. If that knowledge can save your city, how could I refuse?" For a moment, Lyra seemed lost for words. Then she turned her hand beneath his, so their palms met, her fingers intertwining with his. The luminescent patterns on her arm brightened, extending slightly toward the point where they touched. "In my culture," she said softly, "this connection is meaningful. A promise between individuals." Zephyr felt his heartbeat quicken, but didn't pull away. "Then consider it a promise. We'll find a solution together." Outside, the last of the storm clouds parted, allowing unfiltered sunlight to stream into the apartment. Lyra's skin seemed to absorb the light, her purple hue deepening to a rich amethyst shade. For the first time since her arrival, she smiled, fully an expression of such hope and gratitude that Zephyr felt momentarily breathless. "I believe you," she said simply. And in that moment, the distance between their worlds seemed to diminish, replaced by something new and unexplored, a bridge formed by chance and choice in the aftermath of a storm. 2 weeks passed in a blur of shared knowledge and cautious discovery. Zephyr's apartment had transformed into a makeshift laboratory where surface technology and Lemurian science converged. Diagrams and calculations covered every available surface, and prototype devices cluttered the tables. Lyra stood by the window, absorbing the afternoon sunlight. She'd adapted remarkably to surface life. though Zephyr noticed she still needed these light baths several times daily. The purple hue of her skin had grown richer, healthier, and her bioluminescent patterns maintained a steady, comforting glow. "The energy conversion matrix is almost stabilized," she said, studying a holographic projection hovering above Zephyr's workstation. "If we can adapt your atmospheric condenser technology to function underwater, we might be able to harness the thermal differentials directly." Zephyr looked up from his calculations, momentarily distracted by the way sunlight played across her features. "The pressure at those depths would crush conventional materials," he reminded her. "Not for the first time," Lyra smiled, approaching his desk. "That's why I've been teaching you about Lemurian metallurgy." She leaned over his shoulder, her scent reminiscent of ocean depths and exotic blooms. "See here. If we incorporate these crystalline structures into your existing framework," her fingers traced patterns on his diagram, leaving faint luminescent trails that slowly faded. Zephyr found himself increasingly aware of her proximity, the gentle warmth radiating from her skin. "You're brilliant," he murmured, and meant it. Her understanding of energy systems rivaled his own, though approached from an entirely different perspective. Lyra's patterns pulsed, briefly a reaction he'd come to recognize as her equivalent of a blush. "In Lemuria, I was considered ... unconventional, too fascinated by surface science, too willing to challenge traditions." Her silver eyes met his. "No one there ever called me brilliant, and they weren't paying attention," Zephyr replied softly. Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that had been building since the night he found her, now impossible to ignore. Lyra reached out, her fingertips lightly tracing the contour of his jaw. "Your kind doesn't have patterns," she observed, "yet I find I can read you all the same. Your expressions, your gestures, the way your pulse quickens when I'm near." Her own patterns brightened as she spoke. "Like now." Zephyr caught her hand, holding it against his face. "Is that what your patterns are doing? Revealing your thoughts?" "Among my people, it's difficult to hide one's emotions," she admitted. "Our patterns speak what words might not." "And what are they saying now?" he asked, his voice dropping lower. Instead of answering, Lyra leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The contact was electric, literally so, as a gentle current seemed to pass between them, heightening every sensation. Her patterns cascaded in waves of light that momentarily filled the room with a soft blue glow. When they finally parted, Zephyr felt slightly dazed. "I've been wanting to do that since the day you explained quantum resonance theory," he admitted with a small laugh. Lyra's answering laughter was like music. "I've been hoping you would since the moment you brought me tea." Her expression grew more serious. "In my world, connections between individuals are considered as sacred as the deep currents, not undertaken lightly." "It's not so different here," Zephyr said, drawing her closer. "And nothing about what I feel for you is light." She rested her forehead against his, her patterns synchronizing to the rhythm of his heartbeat. "We come from different worlds, Zephyr, yet here we are," he countered. "Building something neither world has seen before." He wasn't just talking about their energy converter prototype. Outside, the sun began to set, painting Nebulan's floating districts in golden light. Through the window, they could see the city's illumination systems activating, thousands of lights coming alive as darkness approached. "Beautiful," Lyra whispered. Watching the transformation, Zephyr wasn't looking at the city. "Yes," he agreed. "Absolutely beautiful." Her patterns responded to his gaze, brightening along the curves of her neck and shoulders. This time, when their lips met again, it felt like worlds colliding in the most harmonious way possible, a convergence neither had sought, but both now treasured above all else. Nebulan's lower market buzzed with activity as Zephyr guided Lyra through the maze of floating stalls. After 3 weeks confined to his apartment, they both needed a break from their intensive work. The prototype energy converter was nearly complete, but crucial components still eluded them. "These atmospheric stabilizers might work if we modify the core," Zephyr explained, examining a merchant's wares while Lyra stood beside him, concealed beneath a hooded cloak despite the warm day. "The molecular density is promising," she agreed, her voice low. Although the diverse population of Nebulan meant unusual appearances rarely drew attention, Lyra's Distinctly non-human features and luminescent patterns were exceptional enough to warrant caution. They moved through the crowd, stopping occasionally to examine technological oddities that might serve their project. Lyra's wonder at the market was evident in her widened silver eyes and the subtle brightening of her patterns beneath her clothing. Your city floats in the sky, while mine sinks beneath the ocean floor. She marveled quietly. It both defy natural limitations through innovation. Zephyr smiled, enjoying her perspective. Different solutions to different problems. Their hands brushed as they walked, fingers intertwining briefly in what had become a familiar gesture of affection. The past week had transformed their collaboration into something deeper. Nights spent talking until dawn, learning the contours of each other's minds and bodies, discovering the surprising compatibility of their different physiologies. I never imagined I could feel this way about someone from the surface, Lyra admitted as they paused at a railing overlooking the cloud layer below. When Lemuria, we're taught that surface dwellers are primitive, focused only on consumption and expansion, while we're told the deep oceans are empty and hostile. Zephyr replied, "Imagine what both our worlds could gain if they truly knew each other." A disturbance rippled through the nearby crowd, shouts of alarm followed by people hurriedly clearing a path. Zephyr instinctively pulled Lyra closer, protective. Through the parting crowd came a figure that sent a chill through both of them. Tall and imposing, with skin a darker purple than Lyra's and patterns that pulsed with aggressive red undertones. Unlike Lyra's delicate luminescence, his markings formed sharp, angular designs that seemed to cut through the air itself. "Malachi," Lyra whispered, her body tensing. "Hunter of the Abyssal Guard." The hunter's silver eyes scanned the market methodically before locking onto them with predatory focus. "Run," Zephyr urged, pulling Lyra toward a narrow side passage between hovering platforms. They fled through Nebulon's labyrinthine structure. Weaving between buildings and across connector bridges, Zephyr led them through service tunnels and maintenance shafts, using his knowledge of the city's infrastructure to stay ahead of their pursuer. "He's tracking my energy signature?" Lyra gasped as they paused in a shadowed alcove. "My patterns. They're distinctive to Lumerian sensors." Zephyr's mind raced. "The electromagnetic disruptor in my workshop might mask it. We need to get back." They moved cautiously through the lower districts, using the growing evening shadows for cover. The hunter was relentless, appearing suddenly on platforms they'd vacated minutes before, forcing them to change course repeatedly. When they finally reached Zephyr's apartment building, relief was short-lived. The door to his workshop hung open, the interior ransacked. Prototype components lay scattered and broken across the floor. "No," Lyra whispered, falling to her knees beside their destroyed work, her patterns dimmed with despair. Months of research. Lemuria's last hope. Zephyr quickly secured the door, then knelt beside her. "We still have our knowledge. The designs exist in our minds, not just in these prototypes." "No. You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "No. Alakai isn't here to bring me home. The Abyssal Guard opposes any alliance with the surface. They'd rather see Lemuria fall than accept help from your kind." Zephyr gently lifted her chin. "Then we'll build it elsewhere. I have contacts in Nebulan's eastern district who can provide shelter and materials." "Why?" Lyra asked, her patterns fluctuating with emotion. "This isn't your fight. Your world isn't ending. You could walk away." Instead of answering with words, Zephyr kissed her, feeling the now familiar electric current pass between them. When they separated, he pressed his forehead against hers. "Your world became my world the moment I found you in that alley." Her patterns surged with blue-white intensity, illuminating the darkened apartment. In Lumerian tradition, when one saves another's life, they become forever connected, what you might call soul-bound. "I believe that," Zephyr said, helping her to her feet. He quickly gathered essential tools and the backup memory crystal containing their research data. "We need to move before he tracks us here." As they prepared to leave, a sound at the window froze them in place. Malachi hung suspended outside, his red-tinged patterns pulsing with triumph. "The Council was right to fear your mission," he said to Lyra, his voice carrying the same underwater resonance as hers, but deeper, colder. "You've been corrupted by the surface, betrayed your own kind." "I'm trying to save our people," Lyra countered, "by polluting our civilization with surface technology." By lying with a surface dweller? Malachi's disgust was evident. The old ways will preserve us, not this abomination you're creating. With unexpected speed, Zephyr activated the electromagnetic shield he'd installed after Lyra's arrival. The energy barrier materialized, temporarily blocking Malachi from entry. The back exit, he urged, grabbing Lyra's hand.
Ow.
They escaped. Into Nebulan's night, the sounds of destruction behind them, confirming Malachi had broken through. As they raced toward the Eastern District, Lyra's patterns dimmed to near invisibility, a Lumerian adaptation for danger. "We'll finish what we started," Zephyr promised as they disappeared into the city's shadowed underbelly. Together, Lyra's hand tightened around his. "Together," she echoed, her silver eyes reflecting the determination in his own. Above them, storm clouds gathered once again around Nebulan's floating platforms, as if the sky itself responded to the brewing conflict below. Rain hammered against the reinforced windows of the abandoned atmospheric research station. For 2 days, Zephyr and Lyra had worked frantically to rebuild their prototype. Using salvaged components and improvised materials, the Eastern District contactant, old colleague of Zephyr's named Naya, had provided them sanctuary in this forgotten outpost at Nebulan's edge. "The energy matrix is stabilizing," Lyra announced, her purple hands dancing across the control interface. Her patterns glowed with concentrated focus, providing additional light in the dimly lit space. Conversion rate at 67%. Zephyr adjusted a series of delicate connectors. "If we can push it past 70, the system should self-sustain even at ocean floor depths." They worked in seamless tandem, anticipating each other's needs and movements as if they'd collaborated for years rather than weeks. Occasionally, their hands would touch, exchanging both tools and quick caresses, moments of tenderness amid their desperate race against time. "Malachi will have alerted others by now," Lyra said softly as they paused to recalibrate. "The Abyssal Guard has resources beyond his individual abilities." Zephyr nodded grimly. "Which is why we need to finish tonight." He looked up at her, taking in her beautiful alien features that had become so beloved to him. "Are you certain the transport conduit will work?" "The principles are sound," she replied. "The same electromagnetic pathways that brought me to the surface can be reversed to return us to Lumeria, US." Zephyr echoed, stilling his hands. Lyra met his gaze directly. "I'm not leaving you behind, Zephyr. Not unless," her patterns dimmed slightly, "unless you don't wish to come." He stepped around the workbench and took her hands in his. "I would follow you anywhere. But surviving in your world, the adaptation would be challenging," she acknowledged, "but not impossible. My people have technology that could help you breathe underwater, at least temporarily. And together, we might find more permanent solutions." The tenderness of the moment shattered as alarms blared throughout the station. Security monitors flickered to life, showing multiple figures approaching through the storm. "They found us," Zephyr said, moving swiftly to seal the internal doors. "How much longer do you need?" "The final calibration sequence takes 15 minutes, Lyra replied, her hands already flying across the controls. "Then the conduit needs another 5 minutes to stabilize." "I'll buy you time," he promised, grabbing an electromagnetic pulse rifle from Naya's emergency supplies. "Just get that converter working." The first explosion rocked the outer doors as Zephyr positioned himself at the station's narrow entry corridor. Through the reinforced viewport, he could see Malachi leading 3 other Lumerians, their aggressive red patterns visible even through the storm. "Your technology can't stop us, surface dweller." Malachi's voice came through the communication system. "Surrender the traitor and the converter plans, and you may yet live." "Generous offer," Zephyr replied calmly, "but I'll have to decline." The second explosion breached the outer seal. Warning lights flashed as the station's emergency systems engaged. Behind him, Lyra worked with intense concentration, her patterns pulsing and complex. Sequences as she communicated directly with the converter through her bioluminescent interface. Zephyr aimed the pulse rifle at the weakened doorway. As the Abyssal Guard breached the first inner door, he fired, sending one of Malachi's companions staggering backward. The confined space worked to his advantage, forcing the Lumerians to approach single file. "Calibration at 89%, Lyra called out. "The converter's core is stabilizing." Another guard fell to Zephyr's defensive barrage. But Malachi pressed forward relentlessly, his own weapon firing bursts of concentrated energy that scored the walls around Zephyr. "Whatever she's promised you is a lie," Malachi shouted. "No surface dweller has ever survived in Lumeria." A blast caught Zephyr's shoulder, sending him sprawling. The pulse rifle clattered away as Malachi advanced, triumph in his silver eyes. "Zephyr." Lyra's desperate cry turned both men's attention to the center of the room, where the converter now hummed with powerful energy. Its core glowed with swirling blue-white light, the same color as Lyra's patterns at their brightest. With unexpected speed, Lyra lunged toward a control panel. The lights throughout the station surged, then failed completely, plunging the room into darkness. The only illumination came from the converter's core and the Lumerian's bioluminescent patterns. In the confusion, Zephyr rolled to his feet and tackled Malachi. They struggled in the semi-darkness, a desperate grappling of limbs and wills. Though the Lumerian hunter was stronger, Zephyr fought with the determination of one protecting not just himself, but a future he'd only just discovered was possible. "Conduit opening," Lyra shouted. The converter's energy coalesced into a swirling vortex of light, a doorway between worlds. Malachi renewed his attack, his patterns flaring with rage. "You'll destroy us all with this abomination." "No," Lyra countered, moving to help Zephyr. "We're saving Lumeria, just not in the way you believe is right." Together, they forced Malachi back from the converter, the hunter's expression contorted with hatred. "The Council will never accept this technology." "They will when they see it working," Lyra replied. "When they see that our worlds can help each other rather than remain in isolation." The transport conduit pulsed with growing stability. "Now, Zephyr," Lyra called, extending her hand to him. "It's time." With one final effort, Zephyr broke away from Malachi and grasped Lyra's outstretched fingers. Her patterns extended from her skin to his at the point of contact, enveloping him in a protective luminescence. "This isn't over," Malachi warned, but his voice faded as the conduit's energy surrounded them. "Ready?" Lyra asked, her silver eyes reflecting both fear and hope. Zephyr looked at their joined hands. Her purple skin against his and felt complete certainty. "With you?" "Always." They stepped into the swirling light together. For a moment, Zephyr experienced a sensation of falling through endless depths, pressure building around him as they descended. Then Lyra's patterns brightened, extending further to envelop him completely, creating a protective cocoon of light and energy. "I've got you," she whispered, her voice clearer than ever in this between space. "Just breathe." The journey seemed both instantaneous and eternal. When the light finally faded, they stood in a vast chamber, unlike anything Zephyr had ever seen. Crystalline structures rose in elegant spires, illuminated by bioluminescent coral and the patterns of dozens of watching Lumerians. Water surrounded them, yet inside Lyra's protective field, Zephyr could breathe normally. Beyond their bubble, he glimpsed the impossible beauty of Lumeria, city of light and life, nestled in what should have been crushing darkness. "Welcome to my world," Lyra said softly, her patterns radiating joy and pride. The watching council members approached cautiously, their own patterns displaying skepticism and wonder in equal measure. Between them, Zephyr and Lyra held the completed converter, the bridge between their worlds. The salvation of her people and the physical manifestation of what they had become together. "It won't be easy," Zephyr murmured, aware of the challenges still ahead, his adaptation to her world, convincing her people to accept their solution, building a future across the divide of species and civilizations. Lyra's patterns brightened in response, illuminating the water around them with hopeful light. "The best journeys never are," she replied, leaning in to kiss him as the luminous city of Lumeria shimmered around them, proof that sometimes salvation came in unexpected forms, and that love, like light, could find its way through even the darkest depths.